My course on the Kalashnikov Sicilian has been out on Chessable for about a year now, and it's really gratifying to see that some of the lines that I recommended have actually been validated in practice, and results have been pretty good. And player of the black pieces here actually follows one of my main lines for quite some time. I have no idea whether he knows my course or not, but it's really interesting to see, and the outcome was pretty positive. So let's take a look. Quick reminder that my Chessable course on the Kalashnikov Sicilian is on sale right now. So if you want to get it, then now is the time. You can get it for an absolute bargain. I'll put the link down in the comments and you'll see it in the video description as well. So here we go. This is the Sicilian Kalashnikov. Of course, white doesn't have to play knight b5, but I think it is the best move. And we get this typical fixed pawn structure. And this knight is sort of going on a wander. It has to find its way back to a sensible position. So I've looked at quite a few games with the Morozzi bind option with c4, but knight c3 is the other main move, and in fact it's more popular than c4. a6, so that gives black the opportunity to push the knight round. And now there are different ways of playing this position. Some people like to play with bishop e6. The old move is b5, which can lead to actually very interesting positions. One of the channel viewers sent me a very nice recent game with b5. Perhaps we'll have a look at that another time. But the move that I recommend in the course is bishop e7, and this has been championed by, well, a lot of very strong players. Alexander Moiseyenko from Ukraine, Magnus Carlsen has played this as well. So basically you're just delaying knight f6. That would transpose to a Sveshnikov with bishop g5. But you're preparing to play knight f6 and then castles. So white now takes the time to redeploy that knight. It's not great at the side of the board. So knight c4. And we push the knight. And then knight f6. So you could say this is almost the starting point of the main line. And now, I mean, there are quite a lot of moves here. You can put the knight on d5, a3, bishop d3. But actually g3 is the most popular move. So this is the main line. Bishop just preparing to come to a solid square on g2 where it supports the pawn on e4. And here one can play solidly. You can just castle, but, well, I do like h5, and this is the main move that I recommend in the course. And this already challenges white. White has to decide, what do you do about this advance? Do you simply play bishop g2 and allow the advance? That can be risky. Do you play h3? But then black can play this and try to use these weakened dark squares later. Or do you solidly block that pawn with h4? Well, that's what happened in this game. And it looks very reasonable, but actually every pawn move creates weaknesses, slight weaknesses, and black manages to exploit that. So here we have a great example of the Trojan Horse. In the course, I point out typical maneuvers, and I call this one the Trojan Horse. You fling the knight in on the outpost, and this can cause some disruption by looming over into white's position. And very often you can actually give up a pawn when you play d4, knight d4 to open up lines. That's why I call it the Trojan Horse. Bishop g2, and now b4. This is exactly my recommendation in the course. So knight d5, knights exchanged, and here is another, I think, a very nice typical move for black. in the Kalashnikov. Okay, I'll give you the chance to think. What would you play with black in this position? Cheers. Well, bishop g4 is a really attractive move, and you can see how this pawn move h4 has slightly weakened that g4 square, and of course supported by the h-pawn allows bishop g4. I call this the poke, and you see this move, bishop g4, in a lot of variations of the Kalashnikov. Very annoying move for white, because moving the queen isn't very pleasant. So for example, queen d3 actually allows an amazing move, bishop e2. Very embarrassing for the queen. Very incredibly unusual to have the bishop here. And this just results in a beautiful position for black. And you take on e4 with obviously a clear advantage. So after bishop g4, white has to play f3. So this provoked this move, f3, and the bishop just falls back actually to the square it really wants to go to, e6, where it looks at that knight. It's a beautiful, chunky square for that bishop. But you can see in provoking f3, that's blunted the bishop, but also weakened that g3 square and opened up that diagonal. f3 is definitely not a move that white wants to make. And already, you know, I feel that black's opening has been a success, actually. So this is the game continuation. In the course, I give bishop e3 as the best move for white. Although I think that after this, I think that black is already actually very comfortably placed with, well, it could be that this knight spins to f5. Could be you leave the knight there, just allow it to be taken. You also have potential to play on the c file as well. It's a very nice minority attack, also very typical for Sicilian positions. But in this game, white takes on b4. White takes the bait, and this is a move again that I looked at in the course. In fact, I recommend a5 and then d5. And I think that black has excellent compensation for the pawn. In this game, black plays d5 immediately. Also a very attractive continuation. So when black breaks with d5 in the Kalashnikov, I call this liberation station because it often liberates black's pieces. And this is a great example of that. So you can see it opens up the bishop, starts to attack white's center. Really nice move. White takes on d5. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And now we can see how, again, we can exploit this move f3. Notice, you know, this bishop is blunted. That's nice. Knight f5. So with the pawn gone from f2, that pawn on g3 is really weak. And we can see how black is already getting through to white's king. White's king's looking a bit drafty with that pawn on f3. Really tricky position already. You know, if white defends that with a really ugly move, I mean, you could just castle here, and I think black has superb compensation for, well, it's two pawns, but I mean, this is so ugly. You could also actually take on g3 here. And if that's taken, then bishop takes, and this actually wins material. This rook is going to drop. So rook h3. I mean, I'm not surprised that white declined to play that. It just looks too ugly. d6 played, and that was taken. And then queen d3. So I think white has ideas, perhaps, of trying to bring the king to the queen side, maybe opening up the long diagonal as well. Queen d3 attacks the knight. And if knight takes, then rook h3, well, that is a bit awkward for black. That knight can't get out. But bishop b4 check. Good move. So this is a bit awkward for the king, and bishop d2, exchange of pieces. And here I think there's a strong argument for playing into the endgame straight away. Check with the rook. Now the king can't come to e2 because of that knight fork. And then just king e7. Now black is a pawn down. But white's coordination is terrible here. And black has this beautiful kingside pawn majority. Wonderful coordination. And that knight, of course, threatens the pawn on g3. I think black has superb compensation for the pawn there. But in the game, black played knight takes g3. Also very attractive, I have to say. And another endgame is on the board. Rook h3. And now the knight came back. But this gives white just a little bit of time to coordinate. I think black is still definitely for choice here. Let me see. Pawns are even, but certainly black's coordination is much better than white's. Bishop d3. And now black went for knight e3. Knight d4 also possible, but knight e3. And here white makes a mistake. Better to put the rook back here. Rook g3 played. And this is actually quite a difficult position for white. After castles, well, the king should actually come here. But this knight can switch round to f4. But actually here, white just made a blunder. King f2. That pesky knight was just too much in the end because black was able to play knight takes c2. Winning a pawn, and considering that, you know, black has this really healthy kingside pawn structure, which is so typical of Sicilian positions and certainly the Kalashnikov, then, I mean, basically white is now lost. So if bishop takes c2, then rook d2 check just picks up the bishop and, well, should be a winning rook and pawn endgame. In the game, white played rook g1, but that, I'm afraid, lost immediately. White is just a piece down and for absolutely nothing. And, well, black has maintained coordination. So here white resigned. So, I mean, the line worked out perfectly. White was under pressure from such an early stage. And I just want to emphasize those themes that are so typical of the Kalashnikov. So first of all, we have the Trojan Horse, that knight just leaping into the outpost on d4, so common. And then we have this very nice idea, the poke, bishop g4, attacking the queen. And that's really awkward for white because it provokes f3, and that really is not a move you want to make. As we saw, g3 was weak. In fact, you know, this diagonal is weak. White's king opens up, very unpleasant. And then just a couple of moves later, we had this typical liberating move, liberation station as I call it, the d5 pawn break, which just blows open the centre. And black had a very nice initiative which he managed to carry through into a win. So just a reminder, the Kalashnikov course, my Sicilian Kalashnikov course, is on sale at the moment at Chessable. Do check out the link down there. And yeah, more coming later. Thanks for watching.